This is war. War and its masses. War and its men. War and its machines. Together they form the big picture.
Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Captain Carl Zimmerman. The Big Picture is a report to you from your Army, an Army committed by you, the people of the United States, to stop communist aggression wherever it may strike. The Big Picture traces the course of events in the Korean campaign through first-hand reports of our combat veterans and through film taken by combat cameramen of the Army Signal Corps. These are the men who daily record on film the big picture as it happens, where it happens.
Originally referred to by military brass as rum and coke soldiers, members of Puerto Rico's 65th Infantry proudly served the United States in the Korean War, leaving behind the tropical island paradise for the harsh and cold climate of the Korean Peninsula. The story of the 65th Infantry Regiment during the Korean War has often been described as one of pride, courage, heartbreak, and redemption. The 65th Regiment fought as a segregated unit from 1950 to 1952 and participated in some of the fiercest battles of the Korean War. The toughness, courage, and loyalty displayed by the Borinqueneers earned the 65th Regiment the admiration of many who had previously harbored reservations about Puerto Rican soldiers. Brigadier General William Harris, who served as the commander of the 65th Infantry Regiment during the early stages of the war, was originally reluctant to take the position due to prejudice amongst the rum and coke soldiers. Harris's experiences, however, eventually led him to regard the regiment as the best damn soldiers that I had ever seen.
Well, I went to the army. I paid myself out there, Korea. And as I went at the city, the country, that was a mess.
So my name is Ed Negron, and this is my dad, Juan Negron. And growing up, it was interesting because my dad never really talked about the war. It wasn't something that we really was brought to our attention until we went to Washington to for him and his infantry to receive the Congressional Gold Medal. And so the first time he's really ever said anything about the war was when we were at the Korean War Monument. And you see all the soldiers with, capes on, and he said to me, just thinking, and he says, when we got there, it was 24 degrees. When we left Puerto Rico, it was in the 90s. It was freezing, and the ponchos and the things that they had on didn't do anything to help with the cold. And that was the first time really that he started talking about the war at all, ever in my, lifetime, if you will. And at that point I was probably 47, 48 years old. So he was very humble, very proud veteran, but just never really discussed it much. So, it's through my childhood and through my adult years, again, it wasn't really anything that I really took and understood, right? Because it was never front and center until he received the award, which really brought out my proudness for my dad, because it was very emotional for him. It was emotional for my sisters and I to hear the stories after so many years. And I remember him telling me a story where, and again, he had never discussed the war before, and he said that they were in the battlefield. He was sitting down on the ground. It was quiet. And at that moment, the commanding officer of his infantry, said, "Everyone to attention, they have a special guest." And he said he stood up with all the other soldiers, and in comes General MacArthur, and came over and shook everyone's hands, and that was emotional. I mean, it was, and I was, after a while, I'm like, all these years, and you're going to tell me now, right, that this happened? So those types of things started coming out later in years, but he's always been a proud veteran before that. My dad always wore his Korean gear and his hats and his, always had a flag on. He was always very proud of his service. And I don't want to say we took it for granted, we just didn't realize how important that was to us. So, at this point, I'm probably more proud of him than anyone can ever imagine. And I show more pictures now and kind of show him shaking hands with Obama. And so it really brought it to our attention even more. And I just can't put into words how proud we are. So if you heard him earlier, when, especially in this state, at this time of his life, he still remembers that it was something that was forced on him, but he accepted it and served his country, right? And he's never looked back regarding that. He's never been boastful about it. He was wounded, went back into infantry, went back into the war, and it was, again, that was part of what he had to do. And that's kind of how, when he was able to communicate that to us and to me, that's what I understood, that it was part of what he was asked to do. He took orders, he completed it, and never looked back. It's not anything regretful or anything. It was just part of what was asked of him. And my dad's always been that way, very, very, very loyal. And so, I'm sure he's very thankful of the opportunity to be able to spread the word about this situation and the war that he was in and what he did. And he's a good man. And, I learned a lot from him.
On 15 November, in the Sea of Japan off the coast of North Korea, Navy Task Force 77 was operating in support of ground action in the drive toward the Yellow River. Winter weather is closing in, and naval operations are hampered by high seas and extreme cold.
Yeah, I was born in 1932. Then I started in the Army 1951. From the beginning, I was trying, was 19 years old, so. Para ese tiempo, pues, yo estaba en segundo año de escuela y quise entrar al ejército, tú sabes, porque yo me había inscrito y entonces, pues, estaba esperando que me llamaran. Entonces, cuando llamaron, entonces, entramos en Bucana y de Bucana a Tortuguero para el training. Fue un algo tan 6 o 7 meses que estuvimos, tú sabes, en el training. y de ahí nos enviaron para Corea. Fue una cosa rápida, tú sabes. Pero los recuerdos que yo tengo son nada más del training. Tú sabes, el training que tuvimos. Y de ahí no tuvimos tiempo para, como fue rápido, tú sabes, terminar el training, que fueron 6 meses. Y de ahí, a los 7 meses, we shipping to Corea. Salimos para Corea en 1951, but fue January. Llegamos a Corea en el primero, el día 2 de febrero. Por ahí. Oh my God. Son cosas que hasta se le olvidan a uno, ¿ves? Pero, ok. Cuando, that was free of cold. Allá fue en febrero, el 2 de febrero, si no me equivoco. Fueron 30 días que nos echamos, sí. 30 días de Puerto Rico a Corea. Y yo recuerdo que llegamos el día primero, el día 2 de febrero a Corea. Me siento muy orgulloso, tú sabes, de haber sido puertorriqueño, uno de los puertorriqueños que estuvimos en este conflicto de Corea, tú sabes. Y muy contento de haber ingresado al ejército y a pasar por todo esto, tú sabes. Pues ser puertorriqueño y tener la oportunidad de estar en el ejército, y porque eso vino desde Corea, que tú sabes. Muy orgulloso de ser borinqueño, mejor dicho. Bueno, a mí me gustó el ejército. Lo que no me gustaba era, porque yo fueron 2 años primero, ¿verdad? Tu entrada por 2 años. Yo realisté por 2 años más. ¿Me entiendes? Realisté en Puerto Rico cuando regresamos de Corea. Pues, entonces después de esos 2 años, pues estuve en Calle también, en Calle estuvimos en el training también de eso, tú sabes. Y de ahí pues fuimos para Fort Lee, Massachusetts. Nos enviaron para Fort Lee, Massachusetts. Allí cumplí yo en Fort Lee, Massachusetts, y de ahí pues no quise quedarme más, tú sabes, porque a mí me gustaban las viejas y yo no estaba en esa jodedera de estar. Yo siempre estaba niqueado con donde hubiera. Bueno, me siento bien orgulloso, tú sabes, de haber estado en el ejército también, tú sabes, de haber regresado. Ha estado en el conflicto que hubo en Corea, tú sabes. Y aquí hasta ahora, tú sabes, me siento muy orgulloso de estar vivo principalmente, tú sabes. Eso es lo importante. Y a la edad que yo tengo, voy a cumplir 94. Todos los que estuvimos allí en ese tiempo, más o menos la misma edad.